The Home Affairs Department says it's clamping down on those abusing the country's refugee management regime. It's after Lithuanian actress Ieva Andrejevaite was deported after deceiving officials during her application, claiming she was fleeing the war in Ukraine. For more on this, we're joined by the Home Affairs Minister, Motsoaledi. Minister Motsoaledi, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Your immigration officials seem to have acted very swiftly on the case of this Lithuanian actress and how she wanted to gain access and ultimately managed to gain access to the country, but all under very dubious circumstances.
Indeed, Kathy. Good evening, and good evening to the viewers and the listeners out there. It is true, Kathy, and I'm very proud for the immigration officials because they were not intimidated. This lady arrived in April at the Cape Town International Airport, and she arrived via a chartered flight with other passengers, but she did not have requisite documents to enter South Africa. In her case, a visa, because she comes from Lithuania. People from Lithuania need visas, meaning need a permit to enter South Africa. But she insisted on entering without a permit. When the immigration officers put his ground, they were phoned by lawyers who were threatening them, trying to bulldoze them into allowing the in, but they stood their ground. Then the lawyers then phoned and said she wants to apply for asylum. Unfortunately, in terms of the laws in the country, when somebody demands that they are asking for asylum, because we are signatories to the United Nations Convention of 1951, we've got to allow them in, but give them 5 days to appear at the nearest refugee reception centers, one of the 5 reception centers, and apply for asylum. So that's why she was allowed in on those grounds that she is an asylum seeker. But then she didn't apply for asylum. She went to a party. She went to party at the party organized by a billionaire called Rob Hessoff. And then what she did not recognize was that when you apply for asylum, we take your passport if you come with it, because you are not supposed to travel since you are applying for asylum. You are looking for international protection. Now, when the party was over, she wanted to go back home, and there was no passport. She then went to court, started speaking ill of the country and saying we are taking her rights away. She has got the right of movement in terms of the South African Constitution, and then also saying she can no longer apply for asylum because the media has blown her identity by putting her names all over. Now the question is, if you don't want your identity to be blown, why do you go to a wedding that is so high-powered? Because that wedding, not a wedding, a party rather, it was not a secret party. It was a party which was attended by a very prominent people. And so we actually acknowledged that. Fortunately, the judge agreed with us, rejected the application. When she then realized she's trapped, she then approached Home Affairs and said, no, she was misled into applying for asylum. She wants to apologize. We then said, look, we can't keep you here against your will, but 3 things must happen. Firstly, you are going to write an apology, which you must approve at Home Affairs, and it must be accepted as an order of court. Secondly, you are going to pay for all our expenses, because when she went to court, we had to defend the case. So all the state money that was paid, she needed to pay it back. And lastly, that we declare a persona non grata, meaning she's a prohibited person. She can't visit South Africa, whether legally or illegally. She can't visit for the next 5 years. And after 5 years, she'll have to apply for her name to be removed from the list of people who are undesirable.
Sure. Dr. Motsoaledi, when we look at what some of the reports around this case suggest, there are suggestions that a personal assistant out of your office or close to your office may have been one of the individuals that was also trying to pressurize the immigration officers into letting her into the country under what would be really illegal circumstances. Have you been able to investigate that? What can you tell us about it?
No, there was never a mention of anybody in my offices, not to my office, who pressurized immigration officers, because the immigration officers will then have told us that there is such an individual, that will have been a criminal offense. I'm not aware of anybody in my office or not close to my office or next to my office, because the immigration officer was phoning us all the time about what must they do, and we're guiding them. Firstly, we're proud that they've refused, and secondly, we're also happy that they were contacting us for guidance.
What would you say are the lessons that have been learned from this entire saga?
Well, Kathy, my thinking is that perhaps we gave a wrong impression about ourselves in terms of immigration, because how does a person just move all the way from Lithuania, fly here and want to enter by force if they never thought it's easy to do so? Maybe they were giving a wrong impression, and I want to bring that impression to an end, that we are a sovereign state, we are just like any other country in Europe where she comes from, and when you come here, you have got to follow the laws of the country.
And the issue around asylum seekers, of course, here we have one high-profile case that has been concluded, but the process is one that has often lended itself to abuse. Talk to me about how you're ensuring that even those cases that are not necessarily high-profile will not fall through the cracks.
Well, let me say, Kathy, people usually accuse Home Affairs of persecuting poor people from the African continent who come to the country illegally. And they usually say we don't do anything about people from Europe, the US, or those who are white who come from developed countries. What people don't know is that it's not easy to come to the country illegally if you come in by flight, especially if you land in our international airports. Because we have got a project, which is a legacy project of 2010, which is run for 24 hours, whereby any plane, before they depart from any destination around the world, they must first send us by email a list of the passengers in that plane. It's called an advanced passenger plan. They must give us the name, and we must see who is inside and decide whether we want to allow them into the country or not. Sometimes airlines take chances, they bring them, we stop them at the airport, and you say, please fly them back at your own expense, and we even charge that airline 15,000 rand as a penalty. So it's not easy to come in. That's why this lady was caught. Most probably, if she came through the land border, she might have sneaked in, because we accept that there are porous borders there. That's why we're establishing the Border Management Authority. But to come by flight is not easy, and that's why she was so easily caught. And now what is left for us to do is to make sure that we solve the problem of our porous borders, so that even through the land you don't come illegally. If you want to visit South Africa, you must use legal means to do so, because we welcome visitors, but we'll never accept visitors who come to the country illegally, as this lady from Lithuania has tried to do.
Home Affairs Minister Motsoaledi, let's leave it there for tonight. Thanks for your time.